Elon Musk and the Street Philosopher, an epic encounter on the streets of the metropolis. Chapter 1. New York on a cold autumn night seemed like a city of endless possibilities and unexpected meetings. The shimmering lights of storefronts and neon signs reflected in puddles from a recent rain, while the hum of cars and conversations of passersby merged into a single urban symphony. Amid this bustling chaos, Elon Musk strolled leisurely through the streets. Dressed in a casual yet impeccably tailored suit, he had decided to step away from his usual world of business meetings and technological innovations to feel the pulse of the metropolis. Finding himself on the corner of a busy street, he entered a small, cozy cafe, where the aroma of freshly roasted coffee blended with the soft jazz melody emanating from an old record player. Ordering a double espresso, Elon sat by the window, observing the streams of people and the flickering city lights. That was when his attention was drawn to a stranger, watching him with unusual intensity. Chapter 2. The first exchange of glances. The stranger was a man in his 40s, with thick, disheveled hair and a worn-out coat that had clearly endured many trials of time. His face, illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights, expressed both curiosity and a certain weariness with the world. He approached the cafe window where Elon was sitting and, in a loud but non-aggressive voice, said, "This is unbelievable. The great Elon Musk himself, the man whose ideas are changing the world. Do you really think you can save humanity?" Hearing these words, Elon looked up and met the stranger's gaze. There was no defensiveness or irritation in his eyes, only genuine curiosity and calmness. He smiled slightly and replied, "Every day, I take steps to make us better. Perhaps salvation is not a moment, but an entire journey." The stranger frowned, and his eyes sparkled with keen interest. He moved closer to the table where Musk was sitting and took a seat opposite him, as if preparing for a long and profound conversation. Chapter 3. The beginning of a great debate. You build electric cars, launch rockets, and develop artificial intelligence. But have you ever considered that all these technologies could turn against us? The stranger began, his voice shifting from soft to resolute as he presented his first argument. Elon slowly lowered his gaze to his steaming cup of coffee, as if weighing each word, and then said, "Technology is a tool. It can destroy or create. It all depends on how we use it and what values we embed in the development of civilization." The stranger shook his head, smiling with slight irony. "And yet, why invest in space travel when there are so many unresolved problems on Earth? People are starving. The planet suffers from ecological disasters, and you propose escaping to a barren Mars." Musk looked out the window, where the night sky was dotted with stars. "Imagine Earth as a computer with the only copy of all of humanity's data. If that computer fails, we lose everything. A backup is not an escape, but a strategic insurance policy. We aim to preserve not just technology, but knowledge, culture, and life itself." The stranger furrowed his brows as if pondering this analogy, then added, "All right, let's say backup is important. But what about ecology? Your electric cars require lithium, and mining this mineral devastates ecosystems. Is this progress truly justified if the price is nature?" Musk sighed softly, as if recalling the complexities of technological progress. "Every revolution comes with sacrifices. The first gasoline cars polluted the air, but then we developed purification technologies and new fuels to improve the situation. I believe that with new solutions and innovations, we can minimize harm, optimize resource extraction, and improve recycling processes." Chapter 4. a dialogue on the future and responsibility. With each sip of coffee, the debate grew more intense. The stranger, who could be called a street philosopher, asked increasingly profound questions, while Elon, like a seasoned strategist, responded thoughtfully, citing historical examples and modern scientific achievements. "And what about artificial intelligence?" the philosopher asked, his voice becoming even more penetrating. "Are you sure this tool won't spiral out of control and replace humans? Won't we become mere spectators of our own downfall?" Musk pondered for a moment, his eyes reflecting both humility and confidence. Artificial intelligence is an extension of humanity's pursuit of self-improvement. Yes, it may change the job market, but we have always found new ways to adapt. Think about how electricity transformed life. At first, people feared it, then they mastered it, and today, the world is unimaginable without it. The same applies to AI. The key is to establish ethical frameworks and guide its development in the interests of society. The philosopher nodded, seeming to accept the answer, but then his gaze grew more contemplative. "You say technology is a tool, but don't you think people sometimes rely too much on these tools, forgetting about their own responsibility? What if technology becomes an excuse for inaction?" Elon looked directly into his companion's eyes and said quietly but firmly, "Every era demands questions from us. If we stop asking questions, progress will halt. I believe that sincere dialogue, even one that happens on the street, can spark thoughts, shift perspectives, and guide us toward a better future. We cannot ignore challenges, but we can use them to grow stronger." At that moment, another passerby joined their table, a young man with a notebook and pen who had been attentively listening to the conversation. He was a student of philosophy and technology, and his eyes gleamed with curiosity and a thirst for knowledge. "Excuse me, may I join?" he asked hesitantly, and both interlocutors nodded, welcoming the new participant. The young man began, "I'm curious how you see the balance between technological progress and preserving human values. After all, without humanity, technology can become a tool of alienation." Musk smiled, realizing that the discussion was gaining new dimensions. "That's a very important question. Humanity must remember that technology is merely an extension of our efforts, not a replacement for our ideals. If we direct technological development with an understanding of social responsibility, we can prevent alienation and even create new forms of communication and creativity." The philosopher added, "But what about those who cannot adapt to change? How can we ensure that progress does not become a cause of social inequality?" Elon, thoughtfully running his hands over the table, replied, "We must invest in education, retraining, and social support. Progress is a challenge we must face together, leaving no one behind. In every crisis, there is an opportunity for growth if we can recognize it and act together." Chapter 5: Searching for Answers and New Horizons. Their conversation lasted for hours, flowing seamlessly from technical matters to philosophical reflections on the meaning of life, responsibility for future generations, and humanity's role in the vast universe. Each participant sought answers not only for themselves, but for all of humanity. Outside the cafe, the city continued its bustling life, unaware of the profound dialogue unfolding inside. Street musicians played melodies somewhere in the distance, and passersby hurried along, unaware that, in this small corner of New York, ideas capable of changing the world were being born. As dawn approached, the three of them, Elon Musk, the street philosopher, and the young student, stood up and shook hands, as if sealing an important ritual of exchanging ideas. Chapter 6. Reflections at Dawn. Stepping outside, Musk breathed in the fresh morning air. He realized that even casual encounters on the street could ignite great change. It wasn't just about building rockets and electric cars. It was about fostering discussions that help understand the true needs of society. With the first rays of sunlight reflecting off the skyscrapers, he walked into a new day, convinced that true progress begins with a question asked on a cold sidewalk beneath a starry sky. Elon Musk and the evening conversation with the unknown. Sage London, on an early autumn evening, was beautiful with its unhurried atmosphere, light fog that enveloped the streets, and the lights illuminating the old buildings. In this mysterious ambiance, where historic alleyways intertwined with modern skyscrapers, Elon Musk, dressed in a stylish yet modest suit, strolled, enjoying a moment of solitude after long business meetings. He had long been accustomed to constant attention, but that evening he decided that he needed to simply be a part of the city, not its giant. Reaching one of the central intersections, Elon noticed a small bookstore with unusual windows filled with antique books and rare editions. The door was ajar, and the smell of dust and fresh pages wafted from inside. He stepped in, feeling how the silence embraced him, and immediately immersed himself in the cozy atmosphere. Antique armchairs, low wooden shelves full of books, dimly lit lamps. Everything in this bookstore felt like it belonged to another time. Taking several volumes of philosophy and the history of technology from the shelf, Elon walked to a table by the window. A cup of hot coffee and the endless observation of London's evening lights. The perfect recipe to escape from everyday worries. He did not expect that his evening would be interrupted. A figure suddenly appeared in his field of view. It was an old man, tall, with a long white beard, giving him a mystical appearance. His coat was worn, as if it had endured many winters. But in his eyes, filled with experience, Elon noticed genuine interest. The old man did not approach immediately, but stopped at a distance, watching Elon intently. After a few minutes, he finally decided to come closer. Chapter 2. The Meeting with the Sage. The old man approached with a slight bow and said, "You are Elon Musk, the man who wants to save humanity. But how can you be sure that humanity has not lost its way if all you create are machines?" Elon was surprised. This question was so direct and blunt that there was no room for simple answers. He raised his eyes from the book and, smiling calmly, replied, "I do not believe that machines can replace humans. I believe that technology should be tools, not replacements. But it is important that we use them correctly, so that people become freer, not more dependent." The old man gave Elon a penetrating look and sat across from him, as if preparing for a long conversation. But isn't the very pursuit of technological development leading to the loss of human connections? Look at how people are increasingly dependent on gadgets, artificial intelligence, and even virtual realities. Are we not becoming slaves to our own progress? Elon paused for a moment. Of course, he had always been a supporter of new technologies, but the question was not so simple. He answered with some thought. Technology, by itself, is neutral. It can either liberate or enslave. What matters is what we do with it. People have always used tools, and it has always been a choice how to use them. But in our case, it is about creating technologies that serve to improve the quality of life, not limit it. Chapter 3. The Debate on Freedom and Technology. The old man continued his question, not yielding. But are you not afraid that your rockets, artificial intelligence, even electric cars, all of this creates an illusion of freedom? Isn't it because of such technologies that humanity has lost its true goal? To live in harmony with nature? Elon felt the debate intensifying. He was not ready to give up, because he too constantly questioned the issues the old man raised. But his answers had something confident and firm about them. I do not share the view that technology is an illusion. Of course, we have mistakes and problems, but that is just part of the journey. Without technology, we cannot survive as a civilization, especially in the face of current global threats. As for harmony with nature, progress and development do not mean destroying nature. Electric cars, solar panels, renewable energy, these are steps toward preserving the planet. The old man looked out the window at the street lights reflected in the rainy puddles, then turned back to Elon. But you are building rockets, sending people to Mars. Doesn't it seem to you that we first need to deal with what we have here, on Earth? Countries are at war. Millions of people are starving. And you are talking about space travel. Elon furrowed his brow, but understood that this question was entirely justified. He could not help but think about the real problems of humanity. He sighed and said, "Of course, there are plenty of problems on Earth. I agree that our home requires urgent measures, but the paradox is that by striving to explore space, we are finding a solution for the survival of humanity. Mars is not an escape. It is a chance for the planet to continue existing if Earth can no longer provide us with a future." Chapter 4. Environmental Problems and Responsibility. The sage thought for a moment, and his gaze became even more penetrating. He continued, "But what about the environment? Don't your technologies harm the environment? Electric vehicles, for example, require the extraction of lithium, and that also destroys ecosystems. Are these efforts justified?" Elon did not answer immediately, knowing that this question concerned not only him, but the entire industry in which he worked. He finally replied with confidence, "We are trying to minimize harm. Yes, lithium is mined with consequences, but we are constantly working to improve the processes and make them more environmentally friendly and sustainable. We must strive for innovations that not only help us, but also take care of the planet. Progress is possible if we can make it less destructive." The old man nodded, but his gaze remained serious. He added, "But don't you think that technology demands more from us than just finding solutions? Maybe we need something more. Something..." Elon understood that the old man was right. Without inner harmony in society, technological progress could become a dead end. He answered with quiet resolve, "Yes, perhaps we should focus not only on technology, but also on the development of humanity. After all, technology is not an end in itself. It should serve our development, not become the cause of our alienation." Chapter 5. Conclusion of the conversation and new questions. At this point, a young man with a laptop in his hands joined the conversation. He had been carefully following their discussion and, with interest in his voice, said, "What do you think is more important? Technology, human values, or ecology? Can the world find a balance between these three components?" Elon, looking at the young man, smiled, understanding that the questions he raised were deep and complex. He replied optimistically, I believe that balance is possible. We need to work on technology while respecting human values and ecology. These three components should not be in conflict. We must find ways to integrate them. The old man also smiled, but his eyes were full of thought. Maybe the real answer is to unite all these spheres: science, art, human values, and nature. Everything should be connected. Elon nodded, realizing that his thoughts were only beginning to come together. The conversation continued, but each participant knew that the search for answers to such questions could last a lifetime. Chapter 6. New Questions and New Perspectives. As the conversation continued, each of the participants felt that in this bookstore, among the ancient tomes and dimly glowing lamps, time seemed to stop. But the questions that arose were not merely theoretical. They concerned the future of humanity. Elon reflected on the old man's words and, after a while, said, "But how can we integrate these three spheres if each of them strives for its own perfection? Technology demands speed, progress, and innovation. Human values require deep thought and understanding of what is important. And ecology, important as it is, forces us to be slow, careful. Perhaps balance is impossible because these directions will always conflict with one another." The old man, stroking his long beard, slowly smiled and replied, "You are right, Elon. On the surface, this may seem like a conflict, but that is only one side of the coin. True balance is not the absence of contradictions. True balance is the ability to adapt to these contradictions and use them for growth, not destruction. It's like in nature. The earth is always in motion, always seeking harmony. Nature does not avoid conflicts. It overcomes them." Elon paused. At that moment, he felt his heart slow down a little. He knew the old man was not talking about something abstract. He was talking about real life, about how one needs to think to create the future. Chapter 7. Technologies and their real impact. Suddenly, the young man standing nearby spoke again. He looked like a programmer or engineer, with a laptop in his hands, but his questions were philosophical, which earned Elon's respect for his depth of thinking. "Elon, do you think we will ever be able to create technologies that can completely replace all our physical and mental limitations, making us, in essence, superhumans? And if so, should we strive for this?" Elon met his gaze and, thinking for a moment, replied, "Perhaps one day we will be able to overcome physical limitations. Biotechnologies, neuroprosthetics, artificial intelligence, they are already expanding our capabilities. But the question is how we will use these abilities. If we strip ourselves of pain, fear, and hardships, we will lose the most important aspects of the human experience. The question is not to become superhumans, but to preserve humanity, even if technologies change our nature." The young man pondered Elon's words. He was surprised that someone like Musk would place such a high value on human principles. His gaze became more serious, and he quietly added, "So you believe that the ideal world is not one where we are devoid of pain and fear, but one where we are able to manage them, where we understand their significance?" Elon nodded. He was pleased that the conversation had taken such a profound turn. Yes, the ideal world is not one without fear, but one where we can overcome these feelings and use them for growth. I am confident that technological development should serve these goals, not create a new kind of slavery. Chapter 8. Returning to Nature and Human Values. The old man, in the meantime, had become almost absorbed in his thoughts, and his gaze became even more contemplative. He slowly said, "You speak of managing fear and pain, but what if we learned to live with them? Perhaps that is true humanity, not the pursuit of perfection, but the ability to be in harmony with ourselves and the world around us, despite all the problems." At that moment, Elon felt his views begin to shift slightly. Could it be that everything he had been striving for was not always answers, but rather questions we ask ourselves and the world? Maybe you're right. We need to learn to be in harmony with ourselves and the world around us. But technology can help us with this. We need to create solutions that not only push us forward, but also make our lives meaningful, more connected to nature, rather than tearing us away from it. The old man, in turn, quietly said, "And perhaps this is where true revolution lies, not in creating new technologies, but in learning to live in unity with what surrounds us. Everything we create should bring us back to the sources, not push us away." Elon reflected. At that moment, he realized that despite his commitment to technology and the future, he needed to find a way to connect it with the simple yet eternal truths that live in the heart of humanity. Not in the constant striving for more, but in finding the balance where technology serves values, rather than undermining them. Chapter 9. Reflections on the Future. The conversation continued, but it had taken a more philosophical turn. The old man, Elon, and the young man began reflecting on what the world would look like in the future if everything they had discussed were to come true. What would happen to people if they could rid themselves of fear and pain, but at the same time lose the ability to self-reflect and self-knowledge? And could they be truly happy? In the end, Elon answered, "Perhaps true progress is not in making the world perfect, but in learning to live with its imperfections. When creating technologies, we must remember the human being, his nature, and his aspirations. This is not innovation for the sake of innovation. It is an attempt to make our world one where humans feel part of something greater, something that does not destroy them." The old man smiled and said, "Maybe this is the most important goal for all of us, not to create ideal conditions, but to learn to be good people in an imperfect world." Elon reflected on his words. Perhaps this was the answer hidden within. That will lead to the inner balance that is now so severely disrupted.